Hello and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. My name is Garrett Zatlin. Yes, it is a bonus episode today. No, it's not Division One content today. It is Division Two, and no, there is no Ben with me today. So it is just me, Garrett Zatlin, your host. It's a solo podcast for today. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying this awesome Regional D2 weekend. Wanted to give everyone a little bit of background about what's kind of going on here. So if you're listening to this, you're a D2 runner or you have some kind of vested interest in Division 2, and that's because we're going over Division 2 regional championships today. I didn't want to put out any written reactions yet because I still wanted us to see, who gets into the national meet officially. As someone who is, I'll just be honest, I think I'm an expert at the COLA system at Division 1. But the Division 2 system, I would argue, is way harder. And we have not yet figured out how to exactly automate that yet in terms of getting the exact national qualifiers. So before we put out any D2 written content on the site, I wanted to wait and make sure that we actually get the actual qualifiers for the national meet first. But I also didn't want to leave you guys hanging. I wanted to ensure that we had some kind of content, something put on the site, something out there for you guys to consume while that is being waited, while we're waiting for that to happen. So here's what I'm going to do today. 20 minutes. I say 20 minutes all the time. It's usually like 30, but 20 minutes today. We'll go over the 8 different regions at the D2 level, and we'll just quickly highlight, touch on a handful of key results that I found interesting, and then we'll move on. And in terms of this episode, you can probably find it on YouTube, probably on Sunday at some point, maybe Sunday night. And then in terms of other aspects, other housekeeping items, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please leave ratings and reviews there. That'd be super appreciative. So, all right, let's get started. And I think if I have a good understanding of what our audience is, I think it is smart to start with the South region, and we are specifically going to talk about the Florida Southern men. And I'm going to specifically talk about them for a little bit longer than I would any other team because they deserve it, and because I think that's the main focal highlight of maybe this weekend, at least so far. And what I'm referencing is that in our D2 regional meet preview, we had one of our writers say that the South men's region, the men's South region, was the most predictable, or I think the most likely in terms of having locks for the automatic qualifiers, the top 3 positions in each region. They believe that Lee, Mississippi College, and Alabama Huntsville were going to be the locks, quote unquote, to automatically advance into the national meet. And Florida Southern did not like that. They were very upset. But in fairness to kind of Grace and in fairness to like what we were doing, you kind of look at some of the results that we were going through, and it wasn't like a ridiculous suggestion. Would I have said that the region was a lock for those 3? No, maybe not, but that definitely would have been my top 3. It would have been Lee, Mississippi College, and Alabama Huntsville as those top 3 spots. But Florida Southern had other plans, and on Saturday, they got second. So it was Lee men in first, Florida Southern in second, and Mississippi College in third. They let us know beforehand that we were wrong, and they let us know after that we were wrong. And I just have to respect it. I just do. It's just one of those things where it's like, hey, you just shrug your shoulders, you brush it off, and you go, they were right, we were wrong, and we will take that L. We will hold the L. They were great. They were really solid, and it was a really sound lineup structure. It was balanced. It's exactly what you would want. You take a look at who's leading the way. Christian Giller tied for 6th place, but actually had the 7th place point. He was 6th, Florida Southern there, and then behind him, it's a balanced lineup that's not too far behind and pretty compact. You had Owen Allen, 15th place. You had Anthony Matthew, 19th place. You had Christopher Colavita, 22nd place, and you had Bryson Yemnitz in 23rd place. That's a top 5, and that's a really compact top 5. In fact, it was a great top 5. It was easily the best top 5 in the field outside of Lee, and there were even probably 6 men deep at 30th place, or even 7th man deep in 37th place. So you just have to respect it. They lost to Embry-Riddle a couple times this season, and Embry-Riddle wasn't exactly a team that we were super crazy high on. So I could see the understanding of where we were like, I just think Mississippi College, Huntsville, and Lee are better. And we were wrong. and we'll take the L. And guess what? I can't help but respect what the Moccasins, how they handled themselves. They were mad. They should have been mad. They let us know afterwards that we were wrong. They did so mostly politely, mostly. Um, but that's how you do it. When you're right and you step up to the plate, you better talk your talk. And I like that they did. I can't help but kind of respect it. Indiana men's DMR did the same thing to me when I predicted them to finish like second or third to last, I think at the Alex Wilson invite a couple years ago. And they destroyed it. They got third place. They were awesome. And I think that's just one of those things where you just take your L, you shrug it off, and you just kind of move on. Congratulations to Florida Southern. You absolutely deserve that spot, and we'll certainly reevaluate where we're going with your predictions in the future. So, in terms of everyone else, again, men's South region, other than that, was pretty straightforward. Women's South region, even more straightforward, right? Lee women dominates 28 points. Tampa women second. Mississippi College third. It's a really clear cut top three. It's not even close. Maybe Grace was talking about this being the most clear cut top three, and if that was the case, then yeah, she would have been right. But I don't really have a whole lot to talk about here. I do think Tampa is like a quietly sneaky good team. I would quietly monitor Tampa. They had 65 points, barely beat Mississippi College by 3 points. But Lee is it's a hard team to gauge Lee against because Lee is just solid across the board, and they were really, really good. They had 4 women in the top 6. They had 6 in the top 14, it looks like. So I do like Tampa, though. I think Tampa, led by Aspen Gordon and Olivia Harp, had Emily Crinny there. They were just balanced across each scoring spot, and I kind of like what they had there. So, all right, let's move on. We're going to go to the Atlantic region. Again, this is one of those regions where I just don't really have a whole lot to offer to you here. I will say this, though. Charleston men tying with Davis and Elkins at 54 points apiece for the regional title was a little surprising. I'll give my respect to Davis Elkins. That's really solid. Charleston eventually got the win overall. They won the tiebreaker there. They went 1-2-3. So in that case, like the tiebreaker was always going to go to them, right? But you got to love what Jan Hughes did in 4th place. You got to love what Jackson Gibson did in 9th place. And then they started packing it together. They went 12, 13, 15 with Thegis Turlo, with Carter McKenna, and with Gabe Condor. It was pretty solid. Again, another one of those lineups that was solid across the board. Shippensburg gets third and 63 points. And again, at the end of the day, who cares what the points were between those top 3 teams? As long as it was those 3 teams, I don't think anyone's stunned. I think when you kind of take a look back at some of our predictions here, let me take a look here. Yeah, I mean, I think we had Shippensburg over Davis and Elkins, but generally speaking, everything else was pretty straightforward. So, women's race, again, Charleston, not at all surprising. We had Davis and Elkins in 2nd place and Slippery Rock in 3rd. They were swapped. I thought maybe we thought Edinboro would do a little bit better. Maybe we thought Lockhaven would do a little bit better. But this was, again, another clear-cut race. I really like Julie LaFair for Charleston. I think she's quietly really solid. You look at what she's done. She's been solid and very consistent across the board. She has national meet experience from last year, and then so far this fall, she's finished 3rd at VT Invitational. She's finished 3rd at the 22nd LHU Invitational. She was 8th at the University Alabama Huntsville Chargers XC Invitational. She won the Mountain East title, which I thought was fairly significant, regardless of what you think about that conference. She actually won fairly comfortably. And she was the 2nd place finisher at the Atlantic region. So she's made really good strides. She's been consistent across the board. She's delivered on each of these stages. We've seen this before where someone runs really well on pretty unexciting stages, and then they go to the national meet and blow up. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think she'll be a fringe like All-American runner here. She has 122nd at the national meet last year with a far lesser resume. So take that for what you will. But I do like her. I thought that was really, really solid. All right, we are going to go to the Central Region. Central Region. Women, Winona State, 52 points, unsurprising here. Augustana in second place. Pittsburgh State women in third, and Mary in fourth. Missouri Southern in fifth. Winona State, Augustana, yeah, no surprises here. I think all we wanted to just see was, how does McKenna Taylor run for Winona State? She was fine, 16th place. But nothing that we really saw here kind of surprised us. But more importantly, I think Pittsburgh State getting third is huge because I think when you kind of look at what Pittsburgh State has done so far this year, they've been good. They've been actually great. But I don't know how many, when I look at their resume, I don't know how excited I would necessarily be. They were 20th at Louisville Classic, and that was behind Cedarville and Mississippi College. That put them ahead of, gosh, I'm trying to figure of like a comparable team that you guys would know. Azusa Pacific, maybe. So it was kind of hard to gauge them, but that was a really solid performance. And I don't really know if they would have had enough to advance on their own. We'll see, or we'll find out here. But I was really pleased with that. And then if you're Mary, I think there's going to be some questions here as to what happens with the rest of this lineup. It's a very top heavy lineup, very top heavy. They had two women in the top 10, they had three in the top 20, and then a pretty significant drop off. And then when you take a look at how they performed, they were second behind Augustana at the GRIAC Invitational, beating Wayne State, Minnesota State, Sioux Falls, things that, teams of that nature. You look at the NSIC championships, again, falling behind Winona State, Augustana. UMary beat Minnesota State, Sioux Falls again. Is that enough? I don't know. I'm not, don't aggregate this. I'm not suggesting anything, but I am curious. I go, man, is that enough of a resume for them to advance to the national meet? And so I think that third automatic spot was really, really important. And I guess we're going to see what happens now moving forward. So in terms of the men's side of the Central Region, East Central destroys, dominates. What's fascinating about East Central is that they had 6 men in the top 21, but they have like a new guy, it seems like, leading their team every other race. Peter Kipkemboy was the guy who won the meet this year, and then Amos Pijakic, sorry, he was third place. And then their traditional low stick, Asbel Kiprab, was back in 12th place. He had teammate Oliver Kiptu ahead of him. What happens if East Central's top men all run well on the same day, specifically at the national meet? How good are they? Because it's either these guys are just inconsistent and one's picking up for the slack of the other, or they're all really good, and when they're all going to be at their best, they're like a podium team almost, because they dominated this field. It wasn't close. They had 40 points. Pittsburgh State was second with 112 points, and Northwest Missouri was third there in 125 points. Washburn, very close, fourth place, 126 points. Can't say that a lot of this to me was at least surprising. I think we thought Pittsburgh State could at least potentially snag one of those auto qualifiers. I think we expected Missouri Southern to get in there. I think you could certainly have said Washburn was in contention. I don't think them finishing fourth is like a super surprising result, although them being 1 point out from an auto qualifier is a little bit surprising. But the team I need to briefly talk about here is Augustana. And we predicted them to finish second. Yeah, they weren't having their best season, but they finished seventh. And Ryan Hartman, awesome second place finish. Kudos to him. And then their second guy was back in 26th place. It's Colton Brand, who I like, and I like Colton Brand a lot. 7th place in the Central Region. I don't know how that's going to go. That's going to make me wonder if this is going to be a team that we see at the national meet. Again, I don't know. I feel like the D2 qualifying process it feels like it's just a little bit trickier for me. That's not a great result, and I'll be curious to see what happens. I hope they get in. I feel like they probably have a shot. If I take a look at some of the results, maybe if I go back to like Griak, they beat UC Colorado Springs, which is a pretty decent result. Kind of going back to the NSEC championships, they beat Minnesota Duluth, which is fine. These are okay results. Trying to go back one more to the SDSU Classic. Yeah, so it's a little hard. I just don't know where they're getting those wins. But we'll see what happens. So surprising race there in the Central region. We're gonna move on. We're gonna go to the East region. Nothing to say here. Southern Connecticut State takes home the women's regional title here in the East region. Robert Wesleyan second, Southern New Hampshire University in third. We had Adelphi taking third. It was Southern New Hampshire University. I mean, there was a 4 points separating the two teams. So congrats to Adelphi. Congrats to the Panthers. Pretty unsurprising results here. Adelphi's firepower was really the difference maker here. The Marsh twins have been fantastic. We've known that they've been great. This was one of the bigger results that they've had. Isabel Marsh and Catherine Marsh, that is. Really strong 1-2 finish from them, but can't say I'm too surprised. And same thing here on the men's side. Southern Connecticut State, they go 2, 5, 7, 8, 10, 20, 22. That is really, really solid. You got to just commend them for what they were doing here. They were just solid across the board, and that's really, really impressive. So, can't say anything. Can't say anything else about this region. It's a pretty straightforward region. I don't really think they have too much of a national impact, at least not right now. So let's move on here to the Midwest region. Grand Valley State men comfortably take home the title. No surprises here. Looks like they just pack ran. Yeah, actually, they definitely pack ran. They went 6, 7, 8, 9, and then they had a guy further back in 18th. Andrew Highland was that fifth guy back at 18th, it looks like. He's really talented, a little inconsistent. Don't always know what I'm getting from him, but when Grand Valley State all runs well on the same day, they're pretty dangerous. So, Lewis men takes second, unsurprising. Saginaw Valley takes third. Walsh takes fourth. Illinois Springfield takes fifth. I think you could have argued either way that Saginaw Valley and Walsh would have taken that last auto spot. And I can tell you, we had Walsh getting that third spot. It was Saginaw Valley, but despite what the score says, I think it was pretty much a coin toss. And then Illinois Springfield, not sure if that's going to be a good enough resume for them to advance to the national meet. It might be. It sincerely might be. But, when I take a look at some of their other results, they did get Drury at the GLVC championships. Back when I go back to the Louisville XC Classic and I go back to, there we go. Then I go back to Louisville XC Classic. They lost to Mississippi College, and then I kind of look at who are the teams that they beat, at the D2 level, and it's Cedarville, and it's Northwood, and it's Roberts Wesleyan, and Roberts Wesleyan's probably a pretty nice win for them to have, if that means anything for them advancing. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a tough argument to see where UIS gets in. I don't think that's totally out of the question, but I think there might be some arguments stacked against them. We'll see. I do like Cortland Ross, though. Cortland Ross is really, really good for the Prairie Stars. So hoping they get in. We'll see what happens. But Ransom Allen, Noah Fisher, Cortland Ross, everyone ran really, really well individually that day. And then women's side, Grand Valley State cruises. Unsurprising, they scored 28 points. I really don't have a lot to say about Grand Valley State. Cedarville, great race. I think we were a little hesitant about how good they were this year relative to last year, but they were still good enough to the point where it would have been silly to pick against them. And I think one of our writers, Gavin, was the guy to kind of detail that in one of our previews. So I think he made a great call. They got second. They beat Lewis by about 5 points here. I love what Cedarville did. Hannah Rem gives them some firepower, which we've been kind of asking for since last year. And then Abby Drosdak in 15th place. Corrine Lynch in 18th place. You got Savannah Ackley in 21st place. For the most part here, it was pretty solid. Naomi Herman 31st place. Solid across the board. I think that was one of their better races, especially when you look at who they were up against. Wayne State 4th, Saginaw Valley 5th. We'll see kind of how that plays out in the national qualifying process. But generally speaking, nothing too surprising here. All right, already spoke about the South. South Central women's race. No surprises. No surprises. Adams State women first, Colorado School of Mines second, Western Colorado third. No surprises there. Western Colorado gets West Texas A&M by 7 points for the third auto qualifier. West Texas A&M gets fourth. I think West Texas is probably going to be advancing. I'm not worried about them. I would think UC Colorado Springs in fifth place advances as well. I would imagine they do. CSU Pueblo sixth, Colorado Christian seventh. That's where things start to get a little bit more tricky. I think there might be arguments. I don't maybe Colorado Christian because of how they ran at Lewis and who they beat there. Maybe CSU Pueblo because of who they beat at the RMAC XC Championships, specifically Colorado Springs and specifically Fort Lewis. But tough day for Fort Lewis. They finished ninth, and I think they probably really needed a bigger performance to kind of put them in the conversation to be nationally, to be national qualifiers, and maybe somehow they get in. And I'm just not familiar with the process, so it's possible. Not sure if that's the case, but we'll see. And then men's side, no surprises here. Adams State gets in. Colorado School of Mines in first place. Adams State in second place. West Texas A&M in third place. Western Colorado fourth. Colorado Christian fifth. I don't see any surprises there. I think all five of those teams are going to advance. I see no issues whatsoever. Fort Lewis men in sixth place is a huge result. It's potentially that result is potentially what's going to get them into the national meet here. And they beat UC Colorado Springs. They beat CSU Pueblo. They beat New Mexico Highlands. They beat MSU Denver. And I don't know how many of those teams are considered like encouraging wins, but Colorado Springs and CSU Pueblo certainly feel like they are. And given how well Fort Lewis ran at the Lewis XC crossover earlier this year, finishing ninth, that was good, but they lost that tiebreaker to Wayne State. That might have been a result that potentially saves them. Maybe. I don't know that for sure, but it's a really solid, performance. And it wasn't pretty. They went 33, 34, 37, 42, 47. It wasn't like, it's not like they had tons of firepower, but they were compact. They had great depth. And I think you have to give them the nod of like, man, they really, really stepped up. And when you pair that with, with how they've run this season, they've run well, but a fourth place finish at the RMAC XC Championships, again over UC Colorado Springs, Pueblo, MSU Denver, New Mexico Highlands. I feel like that's probably going to be enough. I think. Let's see. All right, moving on. We're wrapping up here. Southeast region, Wingate Cruises. They didn't run like three top guys. They didn't run Cass Kopfels. They didn't run Scott Nutter. They didn't run someone else who I'm just blanking on. Barbosa. They didn't run Barbosa. Augusta second, Catawba third, Flagler fourth, Anderson fifth on the men's race. Again, this is the Southeast region. I actually want to say, yeah, Grace predicted that perfectly. She perfectly predicted that top five. So pretty unexciting here. The results were pretty clear cut. Nothing too surprising here. Wingate is, by the way, a team that I still don't think we know how good they are. Like, I don't think we've actually seen their full lineup in a competitive field firing on all cylinders yet. I think we should respect them as a podium contender, and I think we should say, hey, they can finish as high as second. But it's weird because I don't know how many teams we would do that with for teams that we don't really know how good they are. Like, we know they're good, we just don't know how good. And it's been kind of tricky to figure that out this season. In terms of the women's race, yeah, pretty straightforward. Wingate takes it pretty comfortably. Catawba second, Flagler in third. I think we had those two teams flipped in our rankings. Lenoir Ryan in fourth place. That's a really solid result for them. They beat Anderson by 3 points. Anderson was in fifth place. Again, nothing really too surprising here. Catawba's like a really strong team. I know they got second, but Madison Clay I've always liked. She was in fourth, but Michaela Jones taking home the win. And if you kind of look at what she's done this season, it's been really solid. She was third at Catawba Fleet Feet XC Invite. She won the UNG Invitational. She was sixth at the Adidas Invite. She was seventh at the Chargers XC Invitational. She was runner-up at the South Atlantic Cross Country XC Championships, losing only to her teammate Madison Clay. And now she takes home a regional title. She's another one of those women where, just like LaFair, it's really strong results across the board. A couple top three finishes, a couple of wins, great consistency. Sure, some of the competition may not be crazy good, but it's really solid and she's consistent and she has some experience under her belt. And I just struggle to see anything that I dislike on her resume. So she'll be someone I'm watching. I love that she just won that regional title there. All right, and then moving on, West region here. We've got a little bit of to talk about here. So West region, Chico State men take home the win, unsurprising. Azusa Pacific in second, not too surprising. I think we thought they probably could have gotten second. And then Cal Poly Pomona in third place. We had them fourth. We had Azusa Pacific taking third instead. Is that right? Yes, yeah, that's right. So we had Cal Poly fourth. They were third. We had Azusa Pacific in third. They were second. And we had Western Washington in second. They were fourth. Western Washington falling to fourth is a little surprising. They were only 2 points off of Pomona. Pomona had a great race. There again, it was one of those races where they were just kind of compact through the first four, and their number 5 hang on. They just hung on for long enough. Western Washington, it's their top two. We said, hey, they need firepower, but as a result of their top two in McDermott and Oslin, and Oslin was third on Saturday, and it was actually not McDermott, but it was Ryan Claw on ninth place. It was McDermott falling back to 15th place. That's probably the reason why Western Washington does not get into the top 3 and does not get an auto qualifier. And I think that has to be considered there. But the structurally, they're not anything too crazy. They were a little more spread out than I thought they'd be, but I think they're probably fine in terms of national qualification. I think when you kind of look at what they did at the Lewis XC crossover, they were fourth. They beat Walsh, Alaska Anchorage, Saginaw Valley, Wayne State, Fort Lewis. I think they have a good enough resume. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the national qualifying scene. I can just kind of base it off of my very rough knowledge of that. And they beat Alaska Anchorage again at the GNAC championships. I think they're probably okay. We'll see. Alaska Anchorage in fifth, though, is where things get interesting. Do they have enough? And it's been really tough season for Cole Nash. He just hasn't been right. He's been kind of going backwards. He had a couple decent early races, but 16th place. It's a tough result, and sent them way back. And yeah, I don't know what to think about Alaska Anchorage. Tough race for them. And then women's side, Western Washington takes home the win. No, nothing too crazy. Biola second. Okay, sure. Chico State falls way back to third place, and it's a close third place. In fact, they tie for third place with CUI, a team that has given a lot of teams some trouble this season. CUI has really made a run. They made a run against Biola. They made a run against Chico State earlier this season. They were 2 points off of Chico State. They'd beaten Simon Fraser. They had beaten Stan State earlier. They had, again, like I said, gone up against the Pac West Championships, and they had, they at least made things competitive with Biola. And they were tied for third place at 132 points apiece. Chico State wins the tiebreaker to get the third auto qualifying spot. And it's close. It's close. Like Chico State wins the first person tiebreaker, but they lose the second and third man tiebreakers. Thankfully, they won the fourth for them. Thankfully, they won the fifth. That was really tight. And, Della Molina has been great. She's been really, really good. But, Irish Molina had a little bit of an off day. And I don't know if, they really don't have, in these kind of fields, a ton of room for error. Whereas CUI, they don't have a ton of room for error either. But they were leaning really heavily on some of their own low sticks. They have Portia Eisman, Joy Paradis, 9th, 10th place. It's really good firepower. And then Alaska Fairbanks. They fall to 5th place. It's the classic tons of firepower, but no depth kind of thing. They go 1-6-17, I believe. Sorry, they go 1-6-19 overall, but they go 1-6-17 in the scoring. Kendall Kramer first, Rosie Fordham sixth, and then Naomi Bailey 19th. Naomi Bailey hasn't been, clicking on all cylinders. If she has been, the Nunukes probably get the third auto qualifier. And granted, though, at the same time, it's not like this is her fault, right? Because you look at the last two scores here, there's pretty significant drop offs, right? And you kind of go through that, and it's like, man, yeah, I think just as an effort, there's a couple areas where Alaska Fairbanks could have been better. So I don't really want to put it on one person, because it's not one person's responsibility. It is really a collective back end from, after the top two runners, everyone else had areas to improve, and there just wasn't enough depth this year. Just kind of like last year too. So tough result there. We'll see what happens with CUI. We'll see what happens with Fairbanks. St. Martin's in 7th place. They were beaten by Cal Poly Pomona in 6th place. Stan State drops to 9th place. They were beaten by Simon Fraser in 8th place. I don't know how far past Alaska Fairbanks these at-large bids will be given to. I don't even know if Fairbanks is going to get in. Maybe they will. I have no idea. So we'll see. All right. I said that it was going to be 20 minutes, and I also told you that it was probably most likely going to be 30, and that's exactly what happened here. So 31 minutes in, I wanted to give you guys a high-level look at what the D2 scene had just done this past weekend. Really high-level stuff. We're going to wait for the national qualifiers to be announced. We're going to have rankings coming later this week. We're going to have, a bunch of different content on the site. We're going to get ready for D1 regionals. We're going to have some Colas projections if you're a D1 fan. Otherwise, go Apple ratings and reviews, Spotify, all that jazz. You guys know how it goes here. So that's all I got on my end. Congratulations to everyone who ran well today and who's going to be advancing. And then congratulations to everyone who will eventually advance upon announcement of the qualifiers. And that's all I got. Wishing you guys a happy and safe weekend. I'll see you later.